I'm Patrick Comyn. I'm from Virginia. I got 4 different things that have vexing problems and whatnot, and expensive mistakes that I thought perhaps I could visit with and my outlook on it, and maybe it will prevent others from expensive, vexing mistakes. Exploding straws. When I was getting started up until about 5 or 6 years ago, I would have epidemics of them, and I couldn't figure out why. I mean, I troubleshot. And one day I kind of decided maybe the smart thing to do, rather than just keep asking myself the question, I ought to ask somebody else who might have a clue. That might be a good place to start. So I asked a lot of people, and nobody really seemed to know why either. I don't know if I know why, but nobody seemed to have an idea. And then one day I was visiting with Edwin Robertson on it, and he said he didn't really know why. And I said, well, how do you seed your straws? You know, how do you do it? Because he said he hadn't had one blow in like 20 years or something like that. So maybe that's a good place to start, just see how he does it. So he says, well, I always seed, you know, the outermost column pretty darn thoroughly. I said, okay, well, that's good, because when I do it, I use a Syngrow media from, is it Equinol now? Whoever that is, it used to be Bioniche. And with that, you're supposed to seed the air column next to the embryo, because something like the media doesn't have albumin in it, so it doesn't carry the frost down as well or whatever. So I started looking at that. So anyway, exploding straws, really expensive. It's expensive to the owner of the embryos. It's expensive to the practitioner. Gives all of us a black eye, and it really, at the end, can end up decreasing the value of embryos overall, because if you figure that 2 or 3% blow, well, that's 2 or 3% is going to be taken off the value of everything. Possible health hazard. I've had some from me and from some other people that become rockets, and it's exciting. I don't know if anybody else had that, but some are pretty exciting. How does it happen? Well, when you have the air columns in there, well, we all know from physics and everything that when air gets cold, it condenses. This causes negative pressure, so you end up with a vacuum. So when you pull that column down, if you have an incomplete seal up at the top end where you put your plastic tip in, if you're doing that, if you're not burning them, but you're putting a tip in, you're going to have a little bit of air pull down there. And then when that gets cold, that'll also come at a vacuum, or to negative pressure, whatever you want to call it. So nitrogen gets in, liquid nitrogen. I looked it up. Liquid nitrogen has about the same expansion coefficient as gunpowder does. Well, that's cool. I like gunpowder. So why do we have a plug on a straw, really? You know, when I got started, I thought, well, we did it to seal in the plug. No, you don't. You don't need anything to seal the plug. Ice will do it very well. The reason you put the plug in really is for identification as much as anything else, for handling ease. Right? That's really why it's done. I mean, in a sense, you can almost have a really long straw and just burn the middle of it and have the other end sticking up, and it'll probably work just fine. So the plug doesn't really seal the column. Ice does that. And one other thing is, when you're putting a plug in, I used to make this mistake, and I've seen when I've put in embryos from other folks, sometimes people do, and some people like beat them in with a hammer. Okay? That's bad for 2 reasons. First of all, you tend to split the straw sometimes and let nitrogen in. But the other thing is, sometimes when you're pulling the plug out, you really play as hell with whoever's having put that embryo in, because you'll mess up the end and it won't want to lock into into your sheath, right? So nitrogen come in between the top plastic plug and the top fluid column. Nitrogen can come in through the side of the straw with the plastic defect. And I guess nitrogen come in through the bottom plug, you know, down to the cotton plug. That should be gelatinized, because if the PVA powder did what it's supposed to do. Cause 1. Kind of makes sense. Gap left between the plastic plug or heat seal, top of the first fluid column. Gets a little nitrogen there. It blows off the straw. You can repeat this real easily. Defect in the side of the straw, usually the whole damn thing just blows out. Okay? Y'all have seen that with semen straw and stuff like that. Coming through the bottom, I'm kind of a skeptic on that. I think the reason why the cotton plug comes out of the bottom is because it's not in there as tight, if you will, with PVA powder, as a lot of times the plug is on the top. I have had some where the plug itself blows and everything else stays okay, but usually it's the cotton plug that blows because you kind of get a flushing motion. Okay, so basically, if you get nitrogen expansion, go 3 ways, up, down, or sideways, and wherever the weakest point is, where it's going to blow. So, thoroughly moisten the PVA column when you're pulling up your columns. Have fluid to the very top of the straw. Seed the top column aggressively before seeding anything else like the air column like we have to with the Syngrow media. And that should work. And that's a normal filled straw. I don't have a pointer here, but if you see, you see the cotton plug over to the right and to the left, you see, the fluid coming out to the end. And what I'm trying to show there is I seeded that air column and look down to the bottom, and you'll see basically the fluid column contracted almost a centimeter. And then when you take it off and it thaws back out again, it all goes back where it was. So, hitting the end column first hard, got a nice ice ball there, that ain't going anywhere. Okay. The other thing with exploding straws, if you get into a batch where you have one go, well, you're probably going to have another one go, okay? Whatever led to the first one is probably going to lead to the next one. So what I do then, this is just my own way, is I like to pull the straw out of nitrogen right off, and then while it's still frozen, pop the cap off and hold it right at the very top, and then drop and just hold it right into the water. It's worked for me. And Pete Fulper, I don't know where he is, I remember at a meeting, he was talking about keeping like a blood tube or something with holding solution, dropping the whole thing into that. And that makes good sense too if it's going to blow, because then you might be able to recover it. Seating the straw. So the next thing, a guy who's a partner of mine, he had a cow up in Michigan a couple years ago, and some practitioner up in Michigan collected a bunch of embryos off her and heat sealed, and the person's probably in here, did a good job and everything, it was all good. But then he sent the embryos down to North Carolina, and he had heat sealed them, and the practitioner who put them in North Carolina was not certified or anything, and basically didn't know how to run with these things. He cut them too short, and they dropped them in his gun, and he never was able to make a connection with the sheath. So I think they got 2 pregnancies out of 40 embryos. Probably 30 of them went on the ground. So if the embryo doesn't go in the uterus, it ain't going to get a pregnancy. All right, so what I'm saying is real simple, and probably a lot of people think, why he's wasting our time, but this is important. We got to get the embryo where it belongs. So if the straw doesn't lock in the sheath, it's going to be wasted. So if you have a broken straw, sometimes you see one of those where the plug is caught on something, snapped off, and you have this kind of jagged edge. You have that, or if somebody heat sealed just a little bit too low or something like that. So what do? Put the straw in the gun and pull down the sheath. Check it out, see if it's going to work. Right? Right here, I took a picture. I intentionally heat sealed one kind of low. You can see where it's bent over, that's where the heat seal is, right? And once you pull it down as far as you can, so it locks in, then pull the thing back up again. And just look at your sheath as it runs up, and if the straw is connected in and it's running back with it, then you got it. But on the other hand, if the sheath's going this way and the straw is still down, in the well, you're going to have to make an adjustment. So, make a good cut in your heat-sealed straw. 2 options, well, actually 3 options. One thing you could do if you happen to have a grinder right nearby is if you got one that's too low, just take your gun, take your rod out right there and just throw it in a grinder and knock off a centimeter or so. That'll kind of take care of that. Then cut off a little bit of the sheath and it'll lock in, all right? But the other thing you can do is make a bushing out of a cut straw and drop it in the well, and it'll just push everything up some. And I think some of the rods even come with metal bushings in them. Okay? So like this one here is real marginal. Maybe if you cut the sheath enough, you can make it work, but you might have to put something behind it. I guess you could also dump the straw and re-straw it up in something right also. I guess you could do that too. So here I pulled the sheet back. No straw in that sheath, so it didn't happen. It didn't lock. So I made some bushings. Voila. Perfect. And now I seated down, pulled the sheath back out, it's seated in, now I'm ready to go. All right, easy flow filter, just real fast. I like it because it speeds up embryo searches a lot. the way I do it. And what I do is I drain out the dish all the way with the plug out, obviously, in the bottom. And the easy flow is the one that has kind of the ramp on the side, the filter ramp on the side, and then the grids on the bottom. And I put five 20cc flushes through there to clean it up, but I leave the drain open the whole time, so all that fluid runs out. So hopefully I have maybe 20 or 30 mLs in the bottom of the dish, no more than that, about a centimeter. Plug up the hole, start searching, and usually I can get all my embryos in 2 searches rather than 4 or 5, even on a dirty dish. Nice thing about that too is that if you got any blood or anything, you really clean it up, and there's nothing more aggravating than searching a dirty dish. I always beat it pretty hard. I always search 3 times. I beat it pretty hard in between each search, and then when I get ready to freeze or whatever, I'll generally put the dish away and get busy doing my stuff, and then one last time I'll look before I throw it away, because it seems like every now and then you'll get one embryo. It's usually for me in the upper right-hand corner. I don't know why, but that's usually where it is. Calibrate instruments. Never trust digital readouts. When you buy something from eBay, you better check the temperature. There's probably a reason why it was sold. I learned that the hard way more than once. And the other thing is with your freezing unit, it's not a bad idea to take a thermometer and check that thing and do a curve every now and then once yourself, just double check it. Doesn't take much time, saves a lot of time, saves a lot of aggravation. You can go to the drugstore when you buy one of those infant forehead thermometers. They're pretty accurate, and you put it on there, and it pretty much tells you where it is. And that was a heifer of mine. I think this picture's a little screwed up because I had to do it. She isn't quite that misshapen, but she's all right. Thank you.